you go in and people are like, who is this young person telling us what to do? So
Yeah.
I did the most. I worked and worked and worked and worked and overworked because I felt like I needed to prove myself. And so fast forward, after a few other opportunities, I started my own private practice in
Hmm.
hopes of not experiencing burnout. However, when I started my own private practice, it was even worse. And so I'm like, you know
Mm.
what? It is not them, it's me.
Welcome to Journey to Joy Live. I'm your host, Dr. Enjoy, and I have the awesome Dr. RJ here as my special guest. We're here to talk about ignite your spark and beat that burnout because we all know we've
Oh,
dealt with burnout at one point or another. Myself, you, anybody.
absolutely. I'm so excited to be here to talk about this.
Thank you. So tell us who you are. Introduce yourself, Dr. RJ.
Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. RJ, licensed clinical psychologist and corporate burnout strategist. I help executives eliminate stress, anxiety, and burnout so that they can live their version of their best balanced lives because we all have a different version of what work life balance is.
Yes, we do. It looks different for everybody. Self-care routines looks different for everybody. And you have this amazing book, which I had to grab, Executive Burnout, 7 Reasons Why
Yes.
High Performers Crash and Burn Before Reaching Their Full Potential. So it's definitely a must grab. But how did you get into burnout? Is it come from something personal or you just kind of fell into it?
It definitely comes from something personal. So, my first couple of jobs as a clinical psychologist, I've been practicing for 17 years. Of course, I was 27 when
Mhm.
I became a psychologist. And so, my first job as a clinical director, you go in and people are like, who is this young person telling us what to do? So,
Yeah.
I did the most. I worked and worked and worked and worked and overworked because I felt like I needed to prove myself. And so, fast forward, after a few other opportunities, I started my own private practice in
Mhm.
hopes of not experiencing burnout. However, when I started my own private practice, it was even worse. And so I'm like, you
Mm.
know what? It is not them,
Mhm.
it's me. And
Mm.
that then evolved into, if I have experienced this, I
Yeah.
know my clients have experienced this, and
Mhm.
I need to do something about it. And so that's how this burnout piece was birthed.
That's true. We all go through it. And thank you for learning about it and sharing your story to tell others how they can deal with it. So, what exactly is burnout? How do we recognize what it is in ourselves and other people?
So the tricky thing about burnout is that you can't really see it, especially with high achievers, high performing people, rock stars, as they say in corporate America. And I'm rolling my
Hmm.
eyes if y'all can't see me. I roll. Um, we do well on the outside. We're getting the job done. We show up, we look good, we're sharp mentally, we do what we're supposed to do. And on the inside, we're falling apart. There's hopelessness, there's
Mm.
cynicism, there is some level of depression and anxiety. There's a
Hmm.
feeling that, do I really matter?
Hmm.
Am I supposed to be here? So there's the
Hmm.
imposter syndrome. So
Hmm.
burnout is a step above stress in that it has accumulated over time and created its own story inside of your spirit.
Exactly. And that's interesting that you mentioned imposter syndrome because I was actually going to ask that later because I feel like there's got to be a connection between imposter syndrome and burnout. So tell us more
Yes,
about that.
there's definitely a connection. I see, again, I see
Mhm.
it in, it's the funniest thing, not funny like haha funny, but the
Mhm.
funniest thing that I see it in the most
Yeah.
qualified people, like the
Yeah.
people who are definitely where they're supposed to be and who are brilliant are the ones who experience the imposter syndrome. And what I notice is those who maybe are not as skilled,
Mhm.
they're the ones who are out there saying everything, being brave, doing all the things. And so it's kind of like, if anybody should have imposter syndrome, why is it the people that actually know what they're doing? And I thought
Mm.
about Brene Brown's work as it relates to perfectionism. And so she
Mhm.
talks about perfectionism being rooted in shame.
Mm.
What will they think? Right. And
Mhm.
so imposter syndrome is linked to burnout because we're constantly comparing ourselves to others and saying, what will they think, instead of healthy striving, which is, how do I become a better version of me?
And I know I get that when I get invited to talks. It's kind of like, wait, why do you want me? Well, I did go through 16 years of education. Maybe I'm an expert at this, but it still comes and I'll do the talk and I'm like, oh, yeah, I know this. But maybe this podcast is a self care thing because now I can prove to
Mm,
myself every week, I got this, I can do this.
I love that. Yes, yes,
But
yes.
yeah, it happens with everybody. And actually, my BFF, who's a social worker, she did an imposter talk on the radio last week. And we were talking
Mm,
about imposter syndrome in Black people because there's that pressure of, I need to do well, I need to do great in general. But then if you add the racial piece, it's kind of like feeling like someone's looking at me as the Black woman, where, oh, why she have this position? And you feel like you have to be perfect too.
yep.
But have you
And
ever?
often, yeah, often we're the first to do the things in our family. So for some of us,
Mm,
like, so I'm a first generation everything.
hmm.
And so that can definitely add to it. Like, well, I haven't really seen anybody else do it. Are they making a mistake with me? So being the first to do it can be a risk factor. Another part is, I know in our generation,
Hmm.
we were raised on the compete with your neighbor. Everything was performance. So the gold star is on the chart,
Yep.
right? The 1 minute math test, and then they put your scores up. Like
Yeah.
everything was performance and
Yeah.
comparison. I'm not saying anything was wrong with that, is wrong
Right.
with that, but it shaped us into constantly asking, did I meet the mark? Am I good enough? Did I do what I was supposed to do? And it just happens over and over and over and over.
Yeah, and you talk about it in your book, the perfectionism, how through grade school everything went well, all A's. Maybe in college everything went well. That's not my story. I mean, I had all A's in high school, but when I got to college, it was kind of a rude awakening. But for the most part, if we're at this level, we probably did well getting to that point. So it's a matter of always trying to compare ourselves to our past selves and outbeating that and just trying to fulfill the needs that what we think we're supposed to do in that role. So it can get hard, and I can see how that can lead to burnout.
Absolutely, because the measuring stick keeps changing, it keeps moving. And so in order to deal with that, then instead of competing against others,
Hmm.
competing against ourselves is a healthier way. So how do I show up as a better version of me
Hmm.
every single day? Not worrying
Mm.
about other people or what they think.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Now, how does burnout affect an individual's mental health and their emotional well-being?
Burnout is really dangerous in
Hmm.
that it can really spark depression and
Hmm.
anxiety. So
Hmm.
let's say there's already some underlying anxiety and depression there, which is quite common.
Hmm.
Burnout can take it to the next level where it's then showing up and impacting your daily functioning. And
Right.
so, what this might look like in a high achiever is that you rock it out all week at work or in your business, and then you stay on the couch from Friday at 5 p.m. until Monday at 7
Mm.
a.m. because you don't have anything left to give. It can show up like that for sure.
Mm. That is so true. And I literally had some executives explaining that this week to me about they go home, it's a PJ day, PJ weekend, and that's all they're doing is on the couch and it feels good to lay and do that. But it sounds like from what you're saying, that's a sign of maybe you're burnt out, huh? Because you can't do anything else.
If you're choosing to stay in your PJs because you're choosing to, that's different from not being able to do anything else. Those are two totally, I'm a PJs girl. I can live on my couch. However, if I needed to do something else, I could. So I think what your community, your audience can do to like ask themselves, they can say, okay, am I forced to do this? Is my body shutting down? Or
Hmm.
is this a choice of relaxation? And only the individual knows that about themselves.
Yeah, that's true. So, what are some strategies we can do or use to prevent burnout, Dr. RJ?
Oh my goodness, there are so many. First, I would say give yourself permission to not be perfect,
Yeah. Oof.
right? Give yourself permission to not be perfect. Free yourself from perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectionism is false. It's not a thing. There's really no value behind it. Once you free yourself from perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
the next is to get to know yourself. It really is an inside job. So, what are my boundaries? What are my limits? What do I
Boundaries.
love to do? What do I not like to do? And then you build your life around those things.
That's really good. That self-awareness,
Yes.
really looking into yourself. That's why I always recommend journaling and just really internal thoughts and thinking about how you talk to yourself, how you speak to yourself, and what you need to do. So that self-awareness is definitely important. I like that.
I'm glad you said journaling. And so, if we're
Yeah.
talking about strategies, right,
Mhm.
once we have the self awareness, then we have to put a routine into place because motivation isn't enough. I'm not really into motivation, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
I think often executives, high performers, high achievers feel guilt because we're not motivated to do something. But
Mhm.
motivation is not a prerequisite to do a good
Ah,
job. It's not like they don't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not you're motivated. What
that's good.
matters is, yeah, just because. So I'll give you an example. I'm
Mhm.
never motivated to work out ever. Not one morning in 44 and a half years have I jumped up and said, "Ooh, I can't wait to work out." Like never. And I still do it.
You do
I
it
still
anyway
do
because
it
you have to
because
do it.
it's my routine. It's I just get up, I do it. And so I would say remove motivation or the need for motivation to do what you need to do. You need your routine. Now, another strategy, which is one of my favorites, is to have a morning routine.
Mhm.
But as you're developing this morning routine, the first thing is to not touch your device for at least the first 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. That should be hard. I know I definitely touch it within the first 60 seconds,
Yep,
but
most people do. Some people sleep under their pillow, and the first thing is like before your feet even hit the floor.
it's next to my pillow, but I have the baby monitor right there on my phone, so
Okay, so I think it's fine if you're just using it for the baby monitor.
Yeah.
That's fine, right? And you know if you're gonna like scroll and do some other things. So only using your device for things that are absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
No social media, no checking the group chat, no checking work emails, no trying to
Mhm.
get ahead before you've even poured into yourself. The reason that's important is
Mm.
we're starting our day giving, 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 and not pouring into ourselves. And so we start out at a deficit if we start with our devices.
Pour
So we're
into yourself
already
first.
already empty. Yeah.
Wow, that's really good. I love that. Pour into yourself first and don't
Yes.
wait for the motivation. And that goes with like behavioral activation therapy. When I'm talking to patients, well, I don't feel like it. Well, I'm waiting for this until I feel like it. And behavioral activation is kind of like doing it before you feel like it. And as you're doing those things, then all of a sudden you're like, I got this. And
Yeah.
the exercise piece, yeah, that's real. Because for whatever reason, I wait to the end of the day when everybody's asleep to work out, and I'm always super tired, but I just get on the treadmill anyway,
It's like
and it works
I
out.
never want to do this, but it has to be done.
Yeah, the same way we have to eat, we have to brush our teeth, we have to
Yep.
shower, do our hair, those things. So we just do them, even if
And
we
so I'll share a little secret.
yeah,
I do not like to floss, but
nobody
I
I do.
floss. Like, yeah, I'm just like, ugh. But I want white teeth. I
Mhm.
want good dental hygiene. See, my smile is
You have a
acceptable.
great smile too, yes.
But I never want to floss, even as a grown up, even though I
Mhm.
know the health benefit and I do it anyway. It's just part of the routine. The same thing for self care and journaling. Even if you don't feel like doing it, make it a part of your routine because it's necessary.
Exactly. Very good. So we kind of probably touched on this, but I still want to ask a question. In your book, you talk about finding a healthy balance between meeting deadlines and taking care of yourself. What are some practical strategies for achieving that balance if we hadn't talked about it already?
Well, we waste a lot of time. And we waste a lot of time because we are mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
Not because we're lazy, not because we're not good at the work. It's because our brains are begging for a break. And
Mhm.
that's why we procrastinate, waste time. And then
Mhm.
that's how we get behind on deadlines. Now, of course, There are some external factors. It depends on the culture of your company and all those things. But all of that aside, out of the things we can control, having a schedule and a calendar and
Yes.
boundaries will definitely help with this whole deadline versus self-care thing that we're dealing with. I live my life by my calendar, and I
Mm,
don't make any decisions without consulting my calendar, which I call my board of directors.
nice. That makes
Yeah, and
sense because every striving or successful organization has a board of directors that you consult. So your calendar is that for you.
yes, and that's something everyone can do. And it's so that also helps with having problems saying no or boundaries.
Yep,
You're
that's the
telling the
boundary.
truth. Let me check my calendar and then I'll get back to you. And so doing that, whether it's related to meetings at work, working on a
Yeah.
project, social events,
Hmm.
checking your calendar first will definitely lead to preventing burnout because you're not overloading yourself.
Having a calendar and then checking it.
Wait, having
Having
a
it,
calendar, putting
using
the
it.
stuff on it.
Yeah. I always talk about
Right.
check box therapy because if I put a little check box and then I do it and I check it off, it just feels so good.
Yes, yes, yes. It does feel good seeing that something is completed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like balance is a nice unifying theme in your book. In the chapter One Track Mind, you mentioned the balance between the logic and emotions.
Emotion.
How do you think emotional intelligence affects burnout?
Emotional intelligence is so important. What I
Mhm.
find, again, with high achievers is that the cognitive distortions of not being enough scream all day
Yeah.
long. And
Yeah.
so what happens is we misread, we interpret all day long, and then we're exhausted by thoughts of I'm not good enough because we've allowed our emotional mind to
Mhm.
be in the driver's seat. So
Mhm.
emotional intelligence is like a safeguard. It's like a highway rail
Mhm.
that keeps us from going off the deep end as it relates to
Exactly.
ourselves.
Yeah, because if we go off the deep end, we could have meltdowns or panic attacks, or let's just let the stress get the best of us. And when we let the stress get the best of us, then we're getting sick physically and of course mentally. So
Absolutely.
that's important. And I'm going to talk about emotional intelligence next week if anyone wants to know more details
Ooh,
about
that's
that.
exciting. Yes, yes, yes. Very exciting.
How about financial stress? Because as an executive or as a doctor or whoever you are, it's kind of maybe feels like, oh, I should be financially healthy. I should be rich. I should be wealthy. I should be able to budget and have everything together. But maybe you don't. And then there's all that stress, and that makes you feel burnt out because maybe you're not making enough, or you have all these other projects that you're doing so that you can make enough and like be there for your family. Do you ever get into that with your clients?
So I've actually, yes, 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 and yes. Um, I've experienced that myself, right?
Yeah.
So
And not to
as
mention
a
debt from being in school because you're where you I'm
absolutely.
not
So it's
talking about
kind of like
myself.
it's like we start behind the curveball. And
Yeah.
so, what helps my clients and what also helped me is to remove the shoulds. What is, what's
Mm.
actually happening right now in this moment? Because if we get lost in what should be, then we're ineffective. We can't do anything about it. We get frozen, right?
Yeah.
And so, I live my life in quarters, not the full year. So, when April comes, that's another January 1st for me,
Yeah.
and I teach my clients to live their lives in quarters based upon the 12-week year. The
Mhm.
reason that helps with financial stress is because you can take your goals and bite size them and then accomplish little by little. So by the end of the calendar year, you can see your progress. So taking away the shoulds
Mhm.
and looking at it as just data. These are just numbers. It's not anything about my character. It has nothing to do with me, being a not good person or
Right.
making sometimes it's poor decisions, sometimes it's not. But
Yeah.
thinking of finances as just data. Here's the number, here's where it needs to be. What do I do to get there in what period of time? So taking the emotions out of it and then also bringing in experts who can help with that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because I mean, just because you're an expert at what you do doesn't mean you're an expert at your finances. So it's okay to bring them in.
Yep.
Spend whatever money, because that comes with more money, because you have to spend the
Hmm.
money in order to get help. But at the end of the day, that decreases your debt over time. So,
Absolutely. And liability, right? And so if we're talking about um, those of us who work for ourselves or for other corporations and that sort of thing, yes, you spend the money for an accountant or a CPA or whatever, but there's also protection behind that. And so it frees up your brain from
mhm.
having to worry about those things when you should be sleeping at night.
That goes back to, like, with the boundaries, because I feel like with boundaries, it's delegation. So with
Hmm.
whatever you're doing, delegating whatever it needs to do to someone who knows, and that's with your personal life, with personal finances or whatever else could be going on. So it's important.
I love to delegate. I'm the queen of get somebody else to do it.
And you have an assistant, so that's great. I need to get my own assistant.
You definitely need an assistant like yesterday.
Right. Well, I just started the private practice, so but I am good. It's on my list.
Okay.
That's for
I'm
sure.
gonna check in on you.
All right, you do that.
Yes.
Now, speaking of executives, and there's lots of things that affect burnout, like imposter syndrome. What about the breadwinner effect? Because I mean, most of my clients are Black females, and I think yours are too. But anyway, if we're thinking about the Black
Yes.
female, a lot of Black females are breadwinners because they're the ones that are motivated, ambitious. They get their schooling in, and they're that executive, they're that professional, and so that includes maybe the financial stress. That includes the person that you're the one bringing in, but then you're also likely the one doing that parenting, cooking, doing the laundry. I can't say that for me because my husband does a great job, like helping that balance. But in general, I can imagine that maybe someone might have a spouse where they're not as helpful, and being that breadwinner could add to the burnout. What would you say about that? About practical strategies with that?
So I'm gonna say this because I can. Um, Often we are control freaks as Black women
Mm,
for whatever reason. It could be a trauma response. It could
yeah.
be because we don't feel safe. Whatever the reason is, being a control freak is problematic.
Mm,
And so I like to focus on what is in our control, right?
mhm.
I think most of it is an inside job. Figure out what's keeping you from relinquishing control and delegating
Yeah,
and go from there. So when I'm
yeah,
working with executive women, especially those who are wives and moms,
yeah,
they are so rigid and regimented and under the guise of perfectionism that even if the spouse offers to do something, they
Oh,
don't want them to do it because it's not going to be done right.
oh, that's true.
It's a thing.
Yes. I literally had a group of ladies saying that exact
Yeah.
thing, and the guys, their husbands are like, "Why don't you just ask me?"
Yes. So I want to make it clear that we have to figure out why we're in this control freak
Yeah,
thing and then explore that because the help is available at
mhm,
varying levels, varying degrees, but the help
yeah.
is available. Now, I'll say this about my husband.
Mhm.
None of the things that I asked him to do are done my way. Not a one. Not in 17 years, not a one. And that's my issue. I got to get over that, right?
Right,
Because
right.
I don't want to do it. And I'm just kind of like, oh, don't look, just don't look, just don't look.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I'm not saying you're going to feel great about it and excited. Like, I'm not taking it that far. I'm just saying I'm not exhausted and tired because it's still getting done. And so it's like
Wow.
you got to choose one. I avoid eye contact a lot with his processes and the way he works with the kids and does things. That's my control issue. I don't put that on, the people in my family because it's my issue. I deal with it. I kind of side eye and I smile and say thank you and keep it moving. On the other hand, though, I'm not exhausted or burned out because of that.
That's good, that's good. That's so funny because his idea of doing laundry is putting it in the washing machine and maybe putting it in the dryer. But he's like, "Well, at least I put it in there." But you know what? That's okay because I don't even do laundry. My mother-in-law
Right.
comes and does our laundry. So I can talk about him because I know I don't do it either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting over what you think or how you think that thing should be done. That's good.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Mhm.
And I'm saying relinquish that control because it's not worth it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't do laundry at all. There's a whole story behind that, but we
Oh.
send our laundry out. So
Oh.
I'll tell the quick story. You want to hear the story?
Yeah.
So years ago, when I was experiencing burnout,
Mhm.
I would wash the clothes, put them in a dryer, put them in the guest room on the bed. Right. Never fold them
Exactly.
and put them away. Like, guest room bed was where our clothes lived.
Hmm.
And so this was, let's see, how old is Ryan now? I measure everything by the kids' ages. So this was about 9 years ago.
Wow.
And one day, Ryan had like a soccer game or something. He was
Hmm.
3 or 4 at the time,
Hmm.
and he was looking for his either basketball or soccer shorts. Let's call it soccer.
Hmm.
He was looking for his soccer shorts, couldn't find any, and he had a meltdown. I can't find anything. And so then I had a meltdown because the burnout just
Yeah.
accumulated. Like, it wasn't even really about the laundry. It was about me feeling like I could never get ahead or even get anything done. And so years later, I actually put two and two together, and I'm like, I'm never going to complete laundry when I do it. Let
Never.
me pay somebody who can do it from start to finish.
Why
Right.
not?
And so we put our laundry on the porch, and then it comes back. No, they know how to do laundry.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's not, but that's how I relinquish
That is
that control
awesome.
and delegate, and it allows me to spend more quality time with them instead of all day doing laundry.
Spending time folding and doing like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's how I grew up. We washed it, at least it got washed, and we threw it in this chair in the hallway. That's just where it lived. And
And it
same
piles
now.
up. It's
That's
like,
I cannot fold. That's too
mhm,
much.
it's way too much.
So that's
Especially if you
good.
have little kids, they have those little socks, and it's I'm getting overwhelmed just thinking about it. Like, absolutely not.
I have an almost 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and sometimes the 3-year-old socks get put on the 1-year-old, and
Mhm.
the socks are like going all the way up to his knee. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, at least they cover his foot, you
Right.
know?
At least they're socks. Um,
That's hilarious. So let's talk about, are there any long-term effects of burnout if it's not adequately addressed?
Yes. So our bodies are not designed to be under attack for long periods of time. So
Mm,
when we're experiencing stress, our brain is under attack, right? And so
mhm,
in our limbic system, the old school part of our brain, that's what interprets what's danger and what's not. It helps us survive.
mhm.
Well, the thing is, our that part of our brain doesn't have language, so it doesn't know if we're really in danger or we're just stressed out because the laundry's piled to the ceiling. And so it's
Exactly.
going to interpret that as danger. And so think about over and over, day after day, if you're on high alert, if your
Mhm.
brain is on high alert and responding like you're in danger, like you're at war, that's going to break your body down,
The flight or
especially
fight
for
system.
Black women. Yes,
Mhm,
especially for Black women, because we're already at risk for so much due to racism, due to food
mhm.
deserts, due to
Microaggressions.
microaggressions, sexual assault. All these
Mm.
things we're already, you know, high risk. We're high risk because of that. So add on nonstop stress, our bodies are going to shut down. And there is proof that stress, which leads to burnout,
Mhm.
that leads to hypertension or high blood pressure, heart disease, strokes, aneurysms, obesity, insomnia,
Diabetes.
depression, diabetes, irritable bowel syndrome.
Mhm.
All of it is directly a result of untreated burnout or
Ulcers.
prolonged ulcers. Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
ultimately, if you're starting to see those signs, it's done far progressed at that
Yes,
point.
yes. You have to do something like right away, because that means your body is now shutting down because it's been
Yeah.
under attack for so long. So it is serious. I know, like, we talk about stress and that sort of thing, but it is
Yeah.
serious because it can kill you or debilitate you.
I feel like if we had people on here asking questions, somebody might have the question of, at what point do I need to just quit my job because the burnout is too much?
That's a very good question. So I am of the belief that it's an inside job. First, look at yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
because I've been doing this for so long, I'm aware that there are some extreme environments where no matter what you do, no matter if you start your morning in prayer or yoga, you get into that workplace and it's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I would say take the time to make the internal changes. And then if nothing
Yeah.
changes, get out.
I
Right.
love that. Because some people,
I
no
would say
matter
start
what
there.
job, they get burned out. And it's kind of like, is it the
Well, that was me. That was me.
well,
That's
that's
how
what
I
you said,
realized that.
right? Yeah.
Yes, that was me. I went from clinical director to my own
Wow.
business, and the
Wow.
burnout stayed because most of it was me.
Wow. So that's awesome. You have achieved it. So once
Yes.
someone experiences the burnout, if is there anything else we can talk about as far as what steps they can take to recover and regain their well-being?
So I will say the great news is that recovery is possible.
Yeah.
And with the work that both of us do, we help women recover every single day.
Hmm.
So first acknowledge it and then take it seriously like any other health issue. See a professional and just go from there, because there are some things you can do, but it's kind of like having a broken leg. um I don't know if you can really heal a broken leg by yourself. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Like you have to, at
Yeah.
that point, you require professional intervention.
Hmm.
Same thing as it relates to burnout, whether that's a coach or a therapist or whatever.
Hmm.
Do what you need to do to get back healthy.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Dr. RJ. I've asked
My
all the
pleasure.
questions. So we are on Journey to Joy Live, and I always talk with my guests about joy. What does joy mean to you? And do you feel like you're on that journey to joy?
Yes. Oh, joy. It's one of my favorite words. Another thing that is an inside job.
Yep.
Um, it's definitely an inside job. Joy to me is showing up as the best version of myself every single day so that I can walk in my purpose.
Ooh.
And I feel like I'm doing that, whether it's sleeping in and being in my pajamas all day, watching movies on a couch with
Mhm.
my kids, or whether that's being fabulous somewhere with my girls, or whether
Mm.
it's a sexy date night or whatever. Like, the point of joy for me is showing up as the best version of myself, because I have roles. I feel like my gift is not just to career, but it's also
Mhm.
to my family,
Mhm.
and showing up as my best self in all of those areas brings joy to me.
That's awesome. And that's what I see. So it looks like you're doing that. Awesome
Thank you.
job.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. RJ, for coming on Journey to Joy Live. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I have one more thing.
Go ahead.
I have a gift for your listeners. So I want
Oh,
to
great.
give all of your viewers, your listeners, a burnout proof bundle. What it is, it's just a collection of my clients' favorite strategies and tactics and all these things that they use to prevent burnout. And so
Thank you.
your listeners can get it by texting "have it all," so all one word, "have it all," to 833-451-4258. 833-451-4258. And so that
Awesome.
way, all the things we've talked about today, they have a tangible way of like
Wow.
putting their hands on it.
Thank you. And you can find Dr. RJ at Ask Dr. RJ on Instagram.
Yes.
Where else can we find you? I'm sure we can find you anywhere else.
Yes, YouTube, Ask Dr. RJ. Doctor is spelled out. And of course, LinkedIn under Rashana Verwain, or it's probably RJ Verwain, but I'm findable. And then, of course, on all social medias at Ask Dr. RJ.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening.